Welcome to the virtual happy half hour. We'll be getting started in about a minute. We'll be getting started in just a few seconds. We are waiting for folks to join the webinar. We are excited to bring you the topic of how can my team close more business virtually? And we will be recording this for distribution after the session. All right, we are going to get started. Welcome to the virtual happy half hour. It is August 7th, and today we're here to talk about how can my team close more business virtually. We're really excited to bring this topic to you. This is direct feedback from you, our participants. We polled our audience in our last webinar, and this one was the most popular. So we know it's a burning issue for many sales teams in the current environment. And I am Michelle Richardson, the Vice President of Sales Performance Research. And I am joined once again by Russ Scherer, our Director of Coaching and Facilitation. Welcome, Russ.
Good afternoon, Michelle. I did not get a chance before we started to go back and count, but in terms of number of happy half hours this is, but by my count, we've been in kind of quarantine for about 21 weeks. So my guess is we're about to produce our 20th show. So thank you all for joining us. We have a new sponsor today. One of the things that has happened almost universally over the last 2 years, as we've talked with clients, they've always focused in on areas that they would love to see improvement. One is the area of closing more business. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Second is finding prospects or filling their pipeline, which, spoiler alert, that's going to be our topic in 2 weeks. And the third is really, how do I sell more value? How do I start to get more out of my transactions, where the company unique value to a transaction is able to see some additional gross margin out of that. Great questions. Become even more important in this this time of selling virtually and this phase, whatever we are in right now of this coronavirus. We have packaged those together, topics into a series of 3 workshops, all 90 minutes long. Michelle and I get a chance to just really touch lightly on a couple of topics, but if those are 3 topics of interest to you, stay tuned. We're going to talk about the webinar, the workshop, how you signed up for them as we get to the middle of today. We're going to really kind of address 2 key questions. What is selling like in this next normal? And then really look at 4 kind of key questions or 4 things to consider if you really want to win and close more opportunities. So Michelle, what's on the minds of buyers these days?
Well, Russ, what are buyers thinking? And to answer this question, we looked to consulting firm PwC. They do a periodic CFO Pulse Survey, and they've been doing this throughout the pandemic. And in a recent report, this one's from June, they noted 3 top concerns. And these are on the minds of CFOs. This is shaping financial decision-making, buying decision-making moving forward. And those 3 concerns are the effects of a global economic downturn. So this is on the mind of 60% of those CFOs that were surveyed. 58% are concerned about a new wave of COVID-19, and 47% are concerned about the financial impact of this current environment on their company. And this is everything from operations, capital resources, supply chain, etc. And so together, these are driving a business impact of 53%, expecting a decrease in revenue and profits this year. And so of those CFOs, 63% are planning changes to their product or service offering to help raise revenue. So this is important for sellers to think about, because as they are trying to get into accounts and close business, they really do need to understand what is on the minds of their buyers and how can they help really target their products and services to address some of these concerns. We know the buying impact is there too as well. You all will not be surprised. Another survey indicated that 55% of B2B organizations have cut their budgets this year. 24% are cutting existing vendors. 45% have halted work or projects with existing vendors. And 47% have policies that limit engagement with new providers. So it is going to be a little bit harder to get into these accounts, but there is some possibility there as well.
And I think part of this, Michelle, is that this is segment by segment and industry by industry. I saw this morning that one of the theater chains, their revenue in the second quarter dropped 99%. So just let that kind of settle in for you. And many of you, also your businesses are impacted, and some of you are struggling with numbers like that. Others are having record quarters as your product is in demand. But what's important to take away here, if you're trying to get your sales team thinking about closing more business, is that it is taking longer. Decisions are being made more slowly, more people are involved, there's higher level scrutiny by the CFOs. And again, if 60% of them are concerned about economic downturns, they're trying to conserve cash, so they might be harder to convince. On the other hand, this does tend to benefit those sales organizations where your teams are able to sell at a broader, more broadly across an organization, and also at higher levels. And they can get in and talk to the people on the shop floor, to the all the way up to the C-suites if they need to. So one of the things to think about in this environment is how well is your team equipped, and are they ready to go sell at all levels of an organization? Michelle?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So how long will it be like this? And if I had a crystal ball to be able to predict, I could probably be a very, very rich woman at this point. But the uncertainty, and we've been talking about that really since March. But let's take a look at what some of the current indicators are in terms of how long are we going to be in this situation. Optimism for economic improvement within 6 months is down in North America. It's down 13% since June. According to a McKinsey briefing note at the end of July, executives in North America in particular are just being more cautious. And their optimism on what the 6-month outlook is down, as I said, 13%. So we're down below 40% of executives thinking we're going to rebound really quickly. And those numbers are very similar in Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. Companies are extending work from home policies, or they're making it permanent. And so the same survey from PwC, 52% of those CFOs that are concerned about the global economic conditions and a new wave of COVID infections, 52% of them are making work from home permanent. And 52% of them are also investing more in work from home resources. So they see it as something that's here to stay. And this is not just a tech company type phenomenon. I mean, we've all heard about Google and Twitter extending out their work from home policies or making it permanent. But actually, a European automaker announced in June that all non-production staff would work remotely from now on. So for a seller, the people that you are typically used to working with, you may not be able to get face-to-face with them for a long time. And so that's something to really think about, that this virtual engagement is here to stay, at least for the time being.
One of the things that strikes me about this, just kind of two thoughts. I think everyone was feeling fairly optimistic around Memorial Day, and let free from our houses, we could go out, and as Michelle said, that kind of changed the month of end of June, beginning of July. And one of the key things I get in our clients is trying to keep their sales team motivated, to keep them engaged. They're losing sort of the energy to continue to move forward. And so that's going to be a challenge But I think it's also a challenge for buyers we're selling to. They also are struggling with this. They also are working from home. And so not only is your team struggling to do its job, but potentially the buyer is too. We'll talk in a couple of minutes about the impact that might have. One of the things we'd like to know, though, is what do you think? And so we've set up a poll to be able to ask the question, when do you think you go back to face-to-face, as in-person face-to-face, being the majority of your selling time? So not 100%, but more than 50%. Producer Rich, you want to launch that poll for everyone? When do you think we go back to the majority of your interactions being face-to-face?
And we're seeing some of those results start to come in. Thank you to everybody that's participating. I'm very curious to see what those responses look like. And while we're waiting for those to come in, I will say another data point that's come in. Buyer engagement with vendors is going to be down from some of the survey data that we've looked at through the end of 2020, but will improve in 2021. So something to maybe look forward to there.
All right. Michelle, looks like the voting is kind of finished up here.
Yes, so let's take a look at these results. So it looks like the majority of our participants, 44% anyway, say Q2 of 2021 is when we will get back to the majority of face-to-face selling. There's actually 4% that say it's not going to be until 2022. So yeah, we're looking out at least another 2 to 3 quarters before things get back to maybe somewhat close to the old normal.
So I didn't vote, Michelle, but I agree with the poll results. I think that ideally vaccines available in Q1 means it's wide enough, deployed wide enough that we can start to begin to get more face-to-face in Q2.
Yeah. And that's really what a lot of the research is saying, that the vaccine could potentially be a game changer for more face-to-face and in-person interactions. So what really matters to buyers? So we're going to talk about how to close virtually. We've talked about what's on the mind of buyers, what they're thinking, and how long we're going to be in this current environment. So let's take a look at what really matters to buyers. We've done some research here at the Brooks Group out in the general marketplace with professional buyers and procurement specialists. We've also done some work with our clients. And here's kind of where our perspective is. Really, the fundamentals remain unchanged. So whether you're in a pandemic or not, there are certain things that buyers consistently are looking for. So those include get the order right and get it on time. So they want the order to be accurate, whatever it is that they're buying. They want it to be delivered when you said it would be delivered, when they need it. They want products and services that perform to specifications. So you need to be able to have the product, get it to them on time, and it does what you said it would do. They want the price to be right. Doesn't have to be the lowest price, but the price needs to justify the availability and the product performance. And the other thing is to help customers avoid mistakes and manage risk. And I think this is one is particularly important as we think back to what's important to buyers right now, what's on the mind of CFOs. They're really looking at the impacts to their financial bottom line, keeping folks safe, and what are the overall impacts of a global pandemic and the economy. So how can you as a salesperson think about these items and be able to put some perspective in how your product can help your customer achieve these things?
Michelle, I just add that we did some research on this a couple of years ago with buyers. These were the top issues. Yes. We've been recently doing some work for some of our clients to understand what they're looking at. The exact same issues and pretty much the exact same order are coming up. So as much as our method of selling has changed, what customers are looking for from us as suppliers has not really changed.
Exactly. And that research also indicated that things like transparency, really being upfront and clear with your customer, and the ease of doing business can justify a higher price. In our last webinar, Russ, you shared some data from McKinsey about how digital engagement with buyers has doubled. And I think that really falls into that ease of doing business. Mm-hmm. Are you Are you open, honest? Are you sharing everything that you need to share from a transparency standpoint? And are you easy to do business with? And those are important issues to buyers. Again, a year ago, today, it remains the same. Interestingly enough, the least important items to buyers, and this particularly is showing up in some recent customer data that we've looked at, product variety. So many salespeople think it's really important that they have thousands of SKUs in their warehouse and they have a lot of product. But what really matters to your customer is that you have the product that they need for their particular use case, that you can get it on time and it performs the way it is supposed to. So that's one thing. Product variety, not as important to buyers. And also visibility. So I think one of the things that we've been hearing a lot, Russ, in this current environment is I can't, as a salesperson, get face-to-face. I can't get that face time with my customer. Customers are less concerned about being face-to-face and more concerned with the quality of the interactions that you're having. So are you responsive? Are you sharing expertise and helping them avoid mistakes? And are you accessible? Can they get a hold of you when they need to? So those are the things right now that are really mattering to buyers.
Great point.
So as Russ touched on earlier, today's program is sponsored by the Revenue Accelerator. And we heard you, we heard from our clients that this is a hot topic, that this is a big need for sales teams. So we've put together a 3-workshop series. It starts August 19th, and it deals with prospecting, effective questioning, and closing skills virtually. So in this workshop, or this series of workshops, your sales teams will learn ideas that will help them prospect more effectively in this current environment. Suggestions around effective times and methods for reaching prospects, ways to tailor your questions to the role of the client, and how to listen better in a virtual environment as well, and also how to really reduce resistance in a virtual environment, and ways to ask for the business and present a recommendation. So if you're interested in checking out our Revenue Accelerator series, please email contact@thebrooksgroup.com, and producer Rich is going to put that in the chat box, as well as the website information if you'd like to learn more. And again, we'd encourage you to check this out. It's a great workshop series with tactical ideas for hitting your goal in this current environment.
Well, we've looked at kind of the implications to the buyers. Now let's talk about what that means to leadership as you lead your team into how to close more business. And as we go through this, if you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box or the chat box to be able to get more information. First of all, as a leader right now, our job is really to make sure that disaster doesn't become catastrophe. And what I mean by that, and I borrowed that line from one of the McKinsey reports, I believe. We have people who are struggling. We're maybe off our numbers. And if a large percentage of the team is, whether they're emotionally not ready to show up, motivationally not ready to show up, or is technically not ready to show up, that can become much worse. And so as leaders, our number one goal is to make sure that people start to move forward. I spent some time with a friend of mine recently who's in a position in a nonprofit, and he's just stuck. And we talked about how you need to craft a vision for whatever that is that's going to move it forward. And you may not move every one of those people forward, but you've got to have something that gets people through the next, well, according to this poll we just took, the next 6 to 8 months of selling virtually and working from home. Number two, as a part of this, is that recognize this isn't normal for buyers either. They're learning how to do things differently. They're used to selling face-to-face. We're really encouraging our clients right here to lead and not follow. If buyers aren't comfortable with technical tools, how can you help them become more comfortable with some of those? They know how to use Zoom. They know how to use electronic signature devices. Help them be comfortable with that. Do they understand what their new buying process? To the degree that you can come alongside and you're viewed as a trusted advisor in their organization, you can maybe help them define this new buying process together. And I was on a call with a client not long ago, and they used a new phrase to me. It was called a buyer ambush. That is, a buyer showing up on a sales call uninvited. And we should recognize that they're trying to figure it out. So when they show up, see that as an opportunity, not as a problem in terms of where you're going. And then the last thing is you need to make sure that you're addressing any what I call limited mindsets in your organization. Our job as leaders is to make sure that that this is communicated as the new way we're going to sell. It's not temporary. We don't get just this work at 50% normal effort because we can't see people face to face. This is life, whether we like it or not. Mindset drives behaviors, drives outcomes. And so if you want better outcomes, you've got to change behaviors. You do that by starting with mindset. So some of the ideas there, have conversations with your teams. What are they currently seeing? What are they experiencing? If you don't want to use the word feelings, then one of the things you can say in those meetings is just talk to me about your mindset going into a day of calls or a week of calls. How do you prepare for that? So that's kind of the key things for leadership. Now let's look at the deals themselves. First question to ask if you're in a business is the opportunity winnable? Has the rep truly listened to the need? If we're going to close more, we've got to start better. That's been a part of what we do at the Brooks Group for a very long time. Research continually shows that 2/3 or more of buyers say that salespeople don't really listen to them. And about the same number say that they present generic solutions. So they take the time to explain what they need to a salesperson. The salesperson just presents the same they have to everybody else. So now is a time to make sure we've really listened and we're tuning what it is we're recommending to them. Number two, one of the key things we teach Impact is, are they fully qualified? We have 5 attributes of qualification. Michelle, if you want to go ahead and just sort of unveil all of those. But it's important that any opportunity that you're going to close has all of these questions answered in the affirmative. If they have a need, but they yet haven't seen and they become aware of it, they're not going to move forward. If it's not the right person or they don't have the ability to buy, they're not going to move forward. If they don't trust you or your company, unlikely they move forward. Sense of urgency is one of the key ones. One of the things we're recommending to our people right now, our client, is if they don't know when they can place this order because business is uncertain. Ask about what triggers, ask about what the buyer or all the people you're working with that organization are calling what I call the green sprouts, those little shoots that start to come up that say things are getting better for us. It does 2 things. One, it allows you to get a better sense to understand the deal or the opportunity might really close. And second of all, it gets you more into the mindset of the buyer, and they can talk about not only what they are looking for, but also their fears and concerns along the way. And then finally, the last one here is there a clear, hard return on investment? ROI has always been necessary, but in these days of more limited purchasing, if you are not a consumable that's really needed right away, especially in the capital equipment market, you need to make sure there's a good ROI. As someone said, you've got to make sure it makes dollars and cents, cents spelled S-E-N-S-E. I was with a client this week. We're saying this is an area their team struggles in. As a result, it's having some impact on their business. They understand how they can sort of make things better in an area, but they don't understand how that plays out in the broader sense of the company. And it may mean that, for example, you can keep the people on the factory floor safer, but if you can't translate that into what that means in terms of value to the company, it may get lost between your asking for the order and whoever it is that has to approve it. If those things aren't clear, then you maybe because you're not listening and really hearing what they want, maybe because they're not qualified, or maybe because there's no ROI. In any of those 3 cases, it's very hard to close that deal. And one of the best things a leader can do is asking to move on and focus where you do have these attributes. Next up, really what's the mindset or how prepared salesperson to be ready after the order? Do they believe this is a good solution to the customer, and do they believe in the price? One of the things we've seen is if salespeople don't believe in the price, they're going to struggle to be able to communicate or to sell that to a customer. If you're on a call and the salesperson, rather than just saying, here's what we charge for this with confidence, struggles and in hymns and haws and says, gee, maybe like, I think this is the price. And, I've even been on calls where reps presented the price, the next thing out of their mouth is, but we can do better than that if you want. You're not going to close the business. You've got to get comfortable with being able to deliver the price. Number two, is the energy of the rep right? In the ways in which we used to sell, we'd have a meeting, we'd get in the car, we'd drive, would make phone calls, we'd listen to music, we'd listen to podcasts, we'd get back, walk into the next, we'd walk through the building to where we were going to have it. We moved, in other words. We had opportunities to refresh our energy. These days, a lot of people are in their offices, they're on Zoom hour after hour after hour, and it sucks the life out of you. So what we're encouraging is have people have time to get up, to walk around between calls. Have practice potentially standing up as you do your meetings. Standing up just gives you more energy. It improves your voice and inflection. And I think that it also allows the rep to be able to more fully engage their entire body in selling. So make sure you as the rep have the right. And then the last thing is, are you comfortable with the tool? We talk a lot about Zoom or whatever Teams, whatever your app is for calling. But I want to take you back a few years. 19 years ago, 2001, I worked with a VP of sales who was uncomfortable attaching his laptop to an overhead projector. And so he made every presentation get printed out with multiple hard copies, one for everybody in the room, because he just trusts the projector. He grew, he figured it out. He can do that presentation with a projector. We encourage our people to become comfortable with the tool, whether it's Zoom or whatever it might be. We're also encouraging them to look up. It might be you take one of your technically savvy reps and one of your older experienced reps who doesn't like the technology, get them to practice together. Let the junior person make a sales presentation, practice using the tool. Let the more experienced person be able to learn how to use the tool, but also give some advice, a dual mentor, where they're able to improve your sales team. As a result of those two transactions, your team's going to get better overall. That we do from a facilitator perspective at the Brooks. I encourage them to practice with their facilitator until Zoom is no longer concerned with them at all. And if all of that fails, there are group programs out there that are fairly innovative. You can go to the website, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, FaceTime. All of them have free tutorials in terms of how to use the tool. There's also some programs. I recently did a class on a piece of technology from Udemy. They were having a sale. I paid $11 for a 3-hour class. Great. It solved my problems, and I'm much more comfortable using the tool. So be willing to get it if you need to be ready. Next, now that you're ready, is the offer ready to ask for the order? Do you really, at this point, we want you to think about the deliverable versus the delivery. Ask yourself the question, what is it that they really need to, and then focus on those things. In Zoom, you have people's attention. It takes more energy to have a meeting. So you want to shorten it as much as you can and focus in on the really key points. Goes back to that idea of really tailoring your solution and coming up with ROIs for the customers that you present to. Another thing that we teach in Impact is this idea of feature benefit, customer specific benefit. I think we've all heard in sales that we're supposed to sell benefits, not features. So I had a client one time, example, that was selling ball bearings, and the metallurgy of their bearing, I can't remember if it was titanium or what it was the feature. The benefit was that a 50% longer life. Now that's a great benefit if you're on a production line and you have to replace your bearings fairly frequently. But what they did was went the next step. They took it to the customer specific benefit. And so they didn't just say it lasts 50% longer. But what they said was that means we can shut down or reduce the number of times you have to shut down your production line by 1/3. And then they took it one more step and calculated the hard ROI. They were at that point shutting down once a month. They said to the customer, That means you get 4 more production days per year. And they calculated out what the cost was for production days. And it says it means that it also saves you hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of costs. Now, you can't in every case bring it down to dollars, but you can, as a salesperson, work it down to a customer specific benefit. I like to say we're interpreters as salespeople. We have to interpret from what it is we do to what the customer gets out of it. And the less work you make them do in thinking through it, the better overall. Number 2, glance and ask, glance and grab. I borrowed this phrase from somebody, but it has to do with how easy is it for you to see the key points in a presentation. Try to have nice graphics. I did some research that in terms of graphics, if we see an image, 13 milliseconds is all we need to be able to grasp the concept. On the other hand, if I've got to put just text on a slide and read through it, or worse, I've just got my proposal up there and I'm reading through it, the buyer's going to be distracted, spend a lot more time reading than they are in listening to you. So make sure your key points can be grabbed easily so that you can discuss. And then the last one that I find salespeople struggle with sometimes is to ask yourself the question, why wouldn't the buyer move forward? We understand in sales why we should get the deal, but ask yourself what would stop them. I was with a client about 1.5 years ago, and they were asking me why they couldn't get their medical client to take their free software. And we began to talk about this a little bit and determined that their free software actually cost the company $20,000 a year in IT, not in the medical group they were selling to, but in IT. So if you understand the reasons that may get in the way, it helps you be able to address those or be more ready in case they come up with that as an objective. And then the last thing to think about is, how do you ask? Number 1, use the right tool. Not every sales call needs to be on video. Some are best done by voice. Pick up the phone and have a conversation with them. Some are best done by email. One I learned this week that I think is a great idea is think about the parts of your sales call where you are educating the customer. If you're educating them, then maybe you record a soapbox video or a co-video, or I learned of a tool called Loom, L-O-O-M. But it allows you to give a very short sort of educational update. Not only does the buyer appreciate, but they can forward it on up the chain to the people that they're reporting to. Your message in terms of the benefits or the advantages to working with you can be shared without filter, shall we say, throughout the organization. Again, keep those short, but when you're educating, that's a great case. When you're asking for the commitment, that's something that is best to do with video, best to do in online. Second, is the meeting confirmed? And who's going to be, we talked earlier about this idea of a buyer ambush. Ask the question of who's going to be attending. Make sure that it's really for their advantage, because 1, you want to make sure you tailor the content to what they're looking for. So if it's more financial people, you may need more ROI. 2, because if somebody isn't attending, you might want to skip a part of your presentation, going back to that idea of what do they really need to know. Number 3, is it clear that this is the meeting to ask for the order? Make sure you set the agenda, make sure when you open the meeting with a statement of intention that it's your goal to answer the rest of the questions and be able to get to a conclusion in terms of this process, or to be asked for the order, able to get the order started so we can move forward. Whatever the words you use are, don't surprise buyers by asking for an order they're not ready. Next, try to ask a lot of feedback questions as you're going through the presentation. Ask, how does that look? Do I need to do any more clarification here? Have we addressed your concerns? You want to get them talking. You need people to be engaged. And it's hard in a webinar like this. That's why we ask for questions and comments via chat. But what we're really looking for is people leaning forward in the chair. And you want the buyer not to watch it like a TV show, but to lean forward and to be able to ask questions as they need. And then last of all, just ask for the order. Statistics continue to say most salespeople don't really consciously ask for the order, specifically ask for the order. And then understand what happens in the buying process. Do you need a verbal? Do you need them to sign a PDF and email it back to you? Can they sign and shoot a picture of it and send you a JPEG? Does that work for your people? Are you using an electronic tool like HelloSign or PandaDoc or DocuSign? Any of those things in terms of once you've got the verbal, what do I need to go to be able to get this order on my books are important. And again, it goes back to that idea of this still isn't normal. And if it's not normal for you, it's not normal for the buyer. And so together you've got to go set and define the rules of this new world. Let's open it up for questions. Do we have questions? There was one request to go back, Michelle, I think it was to slide number 8, 7 or 8, something like that, if we wanted to back there.
All right, I will back it up. As I have to go through all of the reveals. If anyone else has questions, please.
Yes, if any other questions come up, please ask.
All right, this is slide 8. I'm going to go back to slide 7. I'm thinking that's where the backtrack was.
One of the questions that was raised was any advantage in selling virtually. I think that a lot of advantages in selling virtually. It's more efficient in various parts of the organization. It's really around comfort. A lot of organizations have sold virtually for many, many years. I talked this morning to a person who said, I've wanted to do more virtual with my buyers for years, but have been reluctant to do that. She said, but during the time of lockdown, now they're more comfortable with it. And as a result, I see us using more and more virtual as they go forward in selling. The biggest challenge is the mindset of you can't see somebody face to face. And I believe it's this new normal that we're going to get to. We're still going to use a lot of virtual for certain parts of the sales process, but there'll be other parts that we'll continue to want to do in person. Any other questions before we wrap up?
And while we're waiting for other questions to come in, I would just like to remind everyone that our next webinar will be August 21st. And we will be addressing the topic of refilling your 2020 sales pipeline virtually. So another hot topic from our poll in the last webinar. So we'll be talking about how to refill that pipeline.
All right, without any other questions right now, let me just say, virtual selling is here to stay. I believe that at the heart of it, still want the same things. It's been proven by our data. It's been proven by the conversations I have. We just as leaders have to get our team right mindset that we can do this through a screen, or we can do this at 6 feet distances in a map. Start there. Really understand the ripeness, the readiness of that opportunity. Make sure they've got their energy and their presentation right when they're doing it. That may take practice. Get the sales energy. Get a dialogue going with your customers so you're getting feedback, and then just go ahead and ask for the order. And as Michelle said, our next webinar will be the 21st, Refilling Your 2020 Sales Pipeline Virtually.
Thank you all for joining us.
All right. Have a great Friday.